Today on the podcast, I speak with Dominic Rubino. This is a very impressive founder and entrepreneur. He has bootstrapped two businesses to successful exits, and one of those exits was for over $100 million. This is a fun conversation. It's a winding road. We talk about a lot of different things. First, how he's been able to do this by niching down. This guy focuses specifically on the cabinet industry or any sort of crafts or trade that you're looking to make a scalable business. In addition to niching down, we talk about bootstrapping and why that's the path to go. It might not be right for everybody, but why that was right for him. And something to think about if you're about to take money from a bank or for an investor, why you should maybe second guess that. Then we get into how to run a business with the idea of, are you going to grow it, sell it, or keep it for cash flow, and how it actually has one thing in common on how you're approaching those three things. We get into time and time management for business owners, how to get the most out of what you're doing, and really how to monetize yourself to know what you're worth, so what you should focus on, and more importantly, what you should not focus on. We also get into some other topics around building a sales team, some best practices there, how to find the right people, and a nice little hack to weed out the people that might not be the right fit for you. And we even get into comparing notes on being in other entrepreneurship groups and the importance of having peers and why that's been huge for his journey. But this is a fun conversation. It's a winding road around being a bootstrap business owner. So if you're, trying to figure out if you're going to raise money or do it yourself, or trying to navigate how to niche down and how to decide what's the right niche for you, I think this episode could be helpful to really learn what Dom has done in a very successful way. So I really hope you enjoy today's podcast.
You cannot invent and pioneer if you cannot accept failure.
We wanted people that were insanely great at what they did.
Nobody was making any money at all. Most people thought the internet was going to be a fad.
Dom, super fired up to have you on here. Going through your background, I was telling you before, selfishly, I like these interviews when I can just throw my problems at you and have you solve them. So that's my agenda for today. But how do you even introduce yourself? Like, what's like the quick 30-second on your background so people know before we dive in?
You know what? I'm building a platform for contractor wealth, for true wealth in family, fitness, and business. Just everything you need to be a healthy person as a contractor, because so many guys are overworked and just chasing. And at the end of the day, they go sell a pickup truck with some tools. They don't really have a business. So I show people how to build a business that's got true wealth behind it.
That's amazing. And one thing we were talking about before is you've done some really impressive things. And as I was going through your bio and what you built, the thing that struck out is your lane, your niche as far as focusing specifically on like contractors in this category. Was that on purpose? Was that accidental? How intentional was it, looking back as a Monday morning quarterback, being a genius versus, oh wow, I'm just going to keep following this? Because as a business owner myself, it's the advice that's so easy for me to give, but it is hands down the hardest to take when you're a bootstrap business owner. You don't want to say no to money, no to things, because you're like, oh, I got to keep this thing going. But would love your perspective on that.
Yeah. So finding my niche was hard. Narrowing down. By the way, you see my Profit Tool Belt hat, which sounds, very nice. It's all nice. My first podcast was called, catch this, Cabinet Maker Profit System.com. That's pretty niche. And so imagine telling my buddies, you and I are EO members. So, those are my buddies, telling a bunch of multi-millionaire business owners who've got who chew rocks for breakfast. They're serious guys. They're like, you're doing what? You've got a podcast and you do coaching for cabinet makers? I'm like, yep. But I will tell you, I did the math. It was an underserved market that had a lot of technicians in it. And I've been a professional business coach since 2000. So 24 years, whatever the date is here, 24 years and that many months and days and hours, right? So I've seen, I this sounds horrible to say, but it doesn't matter what company. I can coach that company. But I have to coach the people I like. And I grew up at a trades kitchen table. My uncles are trades guys. I'm used to that kind of language. I'm comfortable. I could dress like this. Yeah. So why not? That's what I chose. But I did the math. The math and the data supported me going after that market, and it allowed me to
Can
find a
we go
really neat niche.
deeper? Can we go deeper on the math? Because you said that, and that got my attention. Because there's this guy David C. Baker, who's like the consultant's consultant. Here's his math. He's like, if there are 2,000 potential customers, then you can have a niche or niche, right?
Yeah,
Like
I
what
learned
was
that
your
from
math?
Pat Flynn. That was exactly what I did. So Pat Flynn, and I haven't met Pat yet, but I owe him a massive, massive thank you. Just because I was listening to him when he was on episode 30. And he was talking about niche down, niche down, niche or niche down, niche
Yeah,
down.
I don't know how to say it. I always
I
go
don't know.
back and forth just so I'm on both sides.
Yeah, tomato, tomato doesn't. But focus, like get focused on what you're really good at, and say no to everything else. And you know what is amazing is my cabinetry audience is incredible. And guess how many people are talking to them about the business of the cabinetry business? One guy, and he's got no neck and one eyebrow. It's this guy. And so it's not easy to build rapport, but they're a genuine audience. I'm a genuine guy. They're technicians. I want to show them how to be an entrepreneur using Gerber's language from the E-Myth Revisited. And it's just a perfect match. So that 2000 number from your reference, I got it from Pat Flynn many years ago, and I believe in it.
Yeah. What was it ever hard? Because I'm sure you, like me, and a lot of business owners get something called shiny object syndrome, right? And like, how did you stay the course? Like, when was it the hardest to be like, hold strong, keep the blinders on, or was it hard even because like times were tough? Like, oh, I can have a cash grab with this if I expand out.
Yeah, so maybe I should back up because my first podcast, and so I start a podcast to serve an audience. And the reason I started a podcast is because I'm a very good public speaker. I'm not great, I'm not world class. And the reason for that is I'm not willing to put in the work, but I can get up on stage and do it, right? I'm comfortable. I've spoken all over the world, big audiences, small. I love speaking. So the one to many aspect for marketing for me was very natural. And so I didn't want to travel anymore, which is the reason I sold my last company because I was traveling all the time and it was affecting my kids, which is not the kind of life I want to have. Right? So I sat down and on paper, I reinvented myself. I didn't talk about what business I was going to go in. I said, what do I need? I need a business where I can serve the right customers, make the right amount of money for me, be proud. Like I need to be able to stand proud and do what I do. Right? Without any, like no shame at all. I'd be able to talk to a priest in an elevator and say, this is what I do. And they would be like, well, that's good. There wouldn't be any shade on me for that. And then I didn't want to travel. So podcasting became the method. But the first podcast I started, and I think episodes are still out there, it was called Zor Business. The Zor Business podcast, because I used to be the franchisor. I used to be the global master franchisor for a business coaching brand. And the trigger there, or when I got Shiny Object, was the data wasn't supporting my decision. Nobody was downloading the podcast. Nobody was listening. And so the world is telling me, hey, you're yelling down an empty hallway. Get out of there. But then when I went to, and you're like, well, how the heck did you go to cabinet makers? Because I love the trades. My first two clients in cabinetry, this is back in the year 2000. So like, I almost have to do the accent, right? Turn of the century, I started, right? My first two clients, and I can never remember which one was first or second, but one guy made coffins. The other guy made pool tables. So generally woodworking, and I've been showing guys how to turn around their wood shops for years.
That's amazing. So it's like following the data, right? And then it's a nice like Venn diagram. Follow the data, follow like where you're passionate, and then like where you can like build a
Yeah.
real business, right?
And for me, where I'm proud, I have to be proud. If the Venn diagram came to me and said, hey, tobacco is your thing, I'd be like, yeah, we got to find another diagram. I'm not doing it. I don't believe in smoking, right? If it came back and said something that was whatever against my values, look, if you offered me today the crystal clear offer to buy a chain of McDonald's or A&W or 7-Elevens, I'd be like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. So I'm not going to.
Yeah. I think it's also you're hitting on something on like being honest with yourself on the reality of a gig or not. It's like, hey, I'm a dad. I don't want to travel. This is crucial time with my kids. It's like I love working with other entrepreneurs in like the woodcrafting space because I think so many times people can fall in love with the idea of business from a spreadsheet. But when you like get into the day to day, it's like, does this bring me joy and fulfillment? And not to get like too woo woo, but if you're playing the long game, that's a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, like, do I care? I actually talked to quite a few guys who are like, this is what you do when you get a girl pregnant, and that's how they got into the business. I'm like, oh, buddy, like we got to get you out of that. They're like, no, I'm fine now. I'm a drywaller, and you get into drywalling by getting a girl pregnant in high school. I'm like, okay, good summary. But I mean, I coach cabinet makers, but in general, I coach the trades. So you might think that I'm really hyper focused and specific, but I coach people that go on the tools to produce a product or service, I guess, in some cases, for a homeowner or a commercial account.
Yeah. The thing that I like about your category compared to mine is I have a growth marketing agency and I move pixels around on web pages. AI is coming for me. I feel like that we got a little bit of time before AI comes for the category that you're into. That as far as knowing people that have redone kitchens and whatnot, how in high demand you guys are.
I'll tell you, I think Hormozy's got a really good. Do you listen to Alex Hormozy
Oh,
or
I
read
see
any?
$100 million offer behind you.
Right?
So yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's amazing. I'm getting my knowledge from a guy who knows how to launch gyms, right? Because I'm willing to be open to, and lots of people are. He's incredible, but that goes to show you that the business concepts we're using. If you listen to my podcast and you're a dentist, you could use AI and swap out every trade word I did and put the word dentist in there, and it's a dental podcast because it's the business of business. I'm in the business of business as a coach, right? So when we talk about Hormozy and replacing us with AI, it ain't going to happen. It's not going to happen because other people are so busy running their company. Let's say they're running a McDonald's. Their mind's around McDonald's. They're never going to AI it. They're going to need somebody to do it. So the people who know how to use the AI to fulfill the need, we're still going to have a sweet spot.
Totally. I feel like it's good for execution, not as much strategy. And speaking of strategy, like you and I were talking beforehand of you've sold two businesses and everything you've done, it's been bootstrap businesses. And I am a big fan of that because I was scarred, not scarred, but in an early life, I was working in startups, so raised VC, and I got this thing called equity. And I'm like, oh boy, I better pick up my yacht now, and like fast forward, I still can't buy like a cup of coffee with some of my shares. You know what I mean? And and I still see people like, because man, you raise funds, you have a boss, and they want a 10x return. You're just moving the goalpost so far back. And I've been very much. I'm actually glad I saw that early on because when you are bootstrapped, yes, you have limitations, but you control your destiny and you can kind of make it what you want. I mean, I'd love to hear from you, like the pros of bootstrapping and just your approach to that because you've done that with multiple businesses.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I've done it, and the businesses I've done, one of them, this wasn't the exit number. The exit revenue number was 120 million. The other one, the exit revenue number was 7. So I got multiples of that, and I'm not at liberty to say the numbers, but everybody knows how to do the math on that stuff, right? So we're not talking about small businesses. And in both cases, the first one, the 120 million started at 0. It was an Excel spreadsheet. The 7 million started at a loss. It was below 0 because I really make good decisions.
Absolutely. And were those you started from scratch or did you come in at certain points?
So the larger business, the $120 million business, I started from scratch. I actually morphed it. I changed it internally until it started to produce what we needed to. So you might say, well, how is the niche there? And and there is a niche story, like finding who it was on that for sure. But it started from randomness. I was selling used junk on eBay, like junk with a QUE at the end, though, I guess, because right. But I was selling on eBay before, eBay was tiny when I started selling on there. We were one of their first power sellers. This was a long time ago, but we sold used LED calculators and ColecoVision and Intellivision games and Dungeons and Dragons, like things other people wanted to buy. I would buy them at garage sales or closeout sales, things like that. And and then we realized it was a mess. Jim, it was such a mess. I was renting my uncle's 2-car garage, and it was packed to the rafters. And here's what the data was telling us: our feedback rating on eBay was dropping because we couldn't find the stuff we'd listed for sale. It was just a mess in there. And so I got frustrated, and I went to a coffee shop and I said, okay, we have to reinvent this business. And so I did a whole bunch of would be business coaching exercises, and I got it down to 3 different verticals: books, LP records, or magazines, because they're repeatable, they're scalable, easy to ship, easy to store, and all that stuff. I decided on books. And at the time, there was a website called half.com where you could take the ISBN number and post it, and automatically you would be able to list it for half of that price. Well, that got bought by Amazon or eBay at one point. But we started to go down that path. And then the data told me something else. Hey, a lot of people are buying like knickknacks and just things from us, right? And one of the things we started to carry was skin whitening cream. Like you test products every once in a while. Well, the Korean market wants skin whitening cream a lot. So we started selling more skin whitening cream, and then you start selling other cream, and then you start selling other stuff. And soon we sold a lot of over-the-counter medications. Then I hired a pharmacist, which where I live, the law is you have to have a pharmacist on the board in order to start a pharmacy, and we became a pharmacy. And so I became one of the largest mail order pharmacies, and that's what I grew to 120 million.
Jeez. And so that's a significant scale. How are you funding the growth of getting new inventory? Is it like cash? So that you're just taking what you're making to reinvest into inventory or growth,
The
or
business has to support itself or the business shuts down. I will shut the business down. The department has to support itself. The division has to support itself. If it's not a self-sustaining marketing strategy, you got to shut it down. Like everything has to be able to sustain itself. Now, of course, there's a little bit of leeway. Let's say I'm doing a direct mail campaign, I've got to invest some money in it to see if it returns. But if it doesn't, either I change the strategy or we kill that strategy.
yeah, because we're going through that. You and I were talking before, the shirt brand that we have, where it's like we did the first inventory buy, awesome, and we sold out, like that's great. But now it's like crap, we're out of inventory, we're pre-selling. We did an order. The initial order was like 20 grand. Now we did one for 50 grand. But it's like a part of me is like I'm down to go like call it slow growth, smart growth. But there's a world where we YOLO this, and it's like raise debt, do this, and I don't have the stomach for a lot of that.
Yeah,
But
I don't have the
I
patience
feel,
for it.
yeah, and I'm just like, and so, but you can kind of on a spreadsheet see what your growth will be over the years. But I don't know. I go back and forth on what's the right approach, and I mean, you clearly did that well, going to $100 million. Like, walk us through your mindset on like this is just how I run things. Was there a time where you're like, I go bigger or no?
We didn't know we were going to get to over 100 million. We are just running. Yeah, just running. The good thing in that business is we got margins. The margins were there to support it, and then you just have to keep feeding it and treat it like a real business. At the time, it was the dot-com bubble, and there was money being thrown at us left and right. And no, no, no. For me, independence is one of my strong values. I need independence. And I don't want to have anybody telling me what to do, even if I fail. Right now, I have coaches. Obviously, I'm a business coach, but I hire coaches and consultants, and I need a CFO to look at the books to tell me, hey, you're out to lunch, do this different. Like I need that, but I don't want a financial partner to come in and say, hey, listen, I know you and your family were just about to take off, but yeah, it's not going to work for us. The board wants you to be in Chicago on Tuesday, so we'll see you there. Oh yeah, no, nope. No, not going to happen. I've been an employee before. I didn't like it. I'm not answering to you or anybody else. This is my company, and we're gonna fail or succeed on my back.
No, I totally agree. It's like it's much more fun to do that and play the game of business than to have to what I call get a real job, right? And that doesn't sound fun. There's this idea that I've seen you talk about like growth and exit strategies, like when to grow it, when to sell it, when to keep it and cash flow it. With these two businesses, you sold both of those. Like for founders and people listening, how should they approach that? Because like with growth hit, candidly, I want to keep it forever as a nice cash flowing business. I like having the skills of a growth team, but then with Neat, there's an exit play with that. We hope, we think. I mean, ask me in 2 years, maybe I just burnt a bunch of money. But I'm interested because you've done this well, and we haven't. Like, how should people navigate that dance of what's the right path for these different businesses and how you did
So
it?
you've asked a very, very interesting question, because making the decision to sell it, keep it for cash flow, or anything else, it actually comes down to the same thing. And that book over your right shoulder is the key. That traction, EOS. You actually build it the same way for everything. Whether you're going to keep this business or sell it, you always build it as if it was going to be sold one day. Right? Now, your finance person will do slightly different books for you, but that, I mean, we're talking about that has little to do with your growth decisions. So you build it as if one day it's going to be sold, but I want to add something to that. You build it as if one day somebody wants to buy it really badly. So don't build your business to sell it, make it buyable. Well, what would that mean? Great systems, great people, great culture, great products, great services, great testimonials, great reviews, fun, or, for me, fun is important, but, it's rewarding. I'll just say reward. Like, there's rewarding outcomes for you. Well, of course, somebody's going to want to buy that. Now, I may not want to sell it, but somebody wants to buy it, and I still get the same outcome. So the real sneaky trick I'm playing with people when I talk about that is you actually do the same thing. No matter what you want your outcome to be, you build it as if you want to sell it one day.
No, yeah, and it's funny. Maybe it was Traction somewhere, but or maybe the book Built to Sell. But it makes total sense whether you want to sell it or not. That's how you should run it. That way, if someone's on the inside or the outside, they get a peek at it. Like, wow, this is well run.
That's what a
Um,
business should be. Yeah.
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 Um,
So it sounds so easy to me, but I do this day in and day out. We coach companies all the time, so we have this conversation daily, and it always comes down to the same basic. What do you want? When do you want it? How are we going to get there?
yeah. Um, I'm reading the book Dan Sullivan, Who Not How, and it's like when you want to make a 10x leap or go to the next level, it's not about how you do it, but who you get to do it, right? And one of the things you talk about is like team, like winners brighten a room by entering, losers brighten a room by leaving, which I just love that quote because it's so true. You have those people that leave or you have to like let them go. And then the next day, the team is like smiling, they're happy. You're like, oh, we
Oh,
should
high
have done
five it in
that
the hallway. Yeah.
months ago. And it's like a lot of people listening work small businesses where like one person can make a culture, one person can ruin it, right? The horrible phrase is like the turd in the pool or whatever ruins the whole swim party. But
I've never
like
heard that one. I like it. That's good. That's good.
um, like you haven't done this alone. I'm assuming these businesses you've built and sold, and it's hard for bootstrap business owners to get the best talent to build the best teams if you're competing with like I'm in Seattle, right? So it's like, oh, should I go work at Amazon and get RSUs or work at
No,
Growth
or
It, right?
Boeing or somewhere else. Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's not, you have no shortage of massive, cool and sexy competition. Yeah.
Yeah, so you've got to create something different. But what advice for people that are like making to make the investment in like rockstar teams and people and how to approach that, how to get those who's?
Yeah. So, the who is important with everything. Who's our ideal client? Who's our ideal employee or team member or business partner? A lot of people have business partners. Um, you know what? I would say with intentionality, you have to build it on paper first. We just did this with a contractor the other day. They needed to hire a project manager to give the business owner more time to pull away from the business because, project managing the installation of a kitchen takes a lot of hand holding and there's a million moving pieces. So it was eating up a lot of his time. So he's like, well, let's just run an ad and get a new project manager. Like, okay, but let's build the perfect project manager on paper first. And then we write an ad that only that person would want to reply to. And then we onboard that person so they go home to their kitchen table and say, honey, oh my God, I can't believe we finally got the job that our family needed to do X, Y, and Z. And then we support the person. And then, we don't put up with any BS if BS comes up. Like we've got a set of rules for how we run this business, right? I don't know if you've ever heard this, but if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything, right? Some of my rancher buddies taught me that, but they say it with a cool accent. I can't do the accent. Uh, yeah, they nail it. But my point here is be intentional about who you bring on your team and then be very specific. If you're not on my team, if you're not going to be part of this team, I love you. You're a great person, but you're going to have to go find another team. Thank you, though. It's not going to work here. And out you go.
It's almost like a warning label too on the job description to scare away anyone that would not be the right fit. But then that way, the person that's the right fit, it's like nailed it. Because like as a marketing agency, we can put up like need a digital marketer, and oh my gosh, you're gonna be flooded with a million people that have different definitions of marketing. So we've had to like really get creative and specific language we use to filter that. But I like what you're saying too on that they have like the warning label because it's everything.
On the people thing, do you guys use behavioral profiles like Myers-Briggs or DISC or?
We don't, but I'm fascinated when companies do, and maybe it's something we should adopt.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Can I talk about that general report? So for people who aren't familiar, I use the one called DISC. DISC stands for driver, influencer, steadiness, and conscientiousness. It's just 4 different behavioral styles that somebody would have. So it's important because if I know that let's say that I start coaching a company and they have an accounts receivable problem. I start to figure out from the owner who the different people are. Maybe I meet the people and I realize their accounts receivable clerk is an outgoing, really bubbly personality person. Well, of course they have an accounts receivable problem. That person is social and willing to build relationships. So when they get on the phone to say, hey, Jim, you got to pay your bill, Jim goes, you know what, Cindy or Stan, you're right, I do. But you know what? I'm going away this weekend. I got this thing. I'll get to it later. And Cindy says, no problem, right? Okay, so if I want to build my team on purpose, I need an accounts payable and receivable clerk that's actually more logical, less emotional, very fact-based, and wants to follow the system. And guess what happens to my accounts receivable? Suddenly my days cash outstanding shrinks because you've got somebody now Cindy is that person who calls Jim and says, Jim, you're late. And Jim goes, I'm a day late. She's like, yeah, but you're still late. We need to get this solved. I'll stay on the phone with you as long as it takes, but let's make sure we understand how we're going to get paid. You walk by Cindy's office, you're like, oh, we hired the right person. So having that intentionality up front, I hire the right person. Doesn't matter what role it's for. But then the other thing that's really important is let's say that Cindy one day is just getting itchy in her skin at our company. Like something's going wrong. I got to call her in for some sort of meeting. Let's call it a corrective meeting. I go back to the DISC report. The DISC report has a keys for communicating section. It says, when you're talking to Cindy, talk like this, but don't talk like that. And I go, okay, well, that makes sense. Cindy's cues are based on this kind of language or this kind of outcome, not this kind of outcome. And so I have to, as a leader, be better at understanding my people's intentions. I don't change who I am. I just make sure that I explain things to them in a way that they understand it best. So that's my ad for something I don't even represent.
Yeah, I love that. I actually want to have our clients go through that as well, so we know how to talk to them sometimes. Because half the time we're like, are they a spreadsheet person or like a Figma person? Like, how do they listen? Are they a design brain or math brain?
You know
That's really
what? There's actually a couple of really quick tests that you can do with people. And I don't know them well enough off the top of my head, but it's basically, are they an asker or a teller? Like, do they ask stuff or do they tell? Are they introverted or are they extroverted? And if you use those 4 definitions against the DISC profile, you'll be able to sort of put them in their categories. But one of the ways to find that out is their patterns of speech. Like listen to their patterns of speech, how they ask questions, how they respond, their pace, their tone. And that'll tell you a lot. It's matching and mirroring, which we would learn in many places, right? Tony Robbins is an example. But that gives me a good indication of their style.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what I am. So I have some self awareness. I need to go through this exercise. I feel like you've already labeled me. Which you're kind of saying something, but not saying like a lot of things here are also applicable to sales, which I'm interested to get your thoughts on because I had to reschedule this call. I was 5 minutes late because of sales. We do have an amazing salesperson who has really done a lot, but I'm still involved in a decent amount of it. And it can be the hardest thing to let go of. If it's, I think it's traction, where it's like letting go of the vine, or if that was scaling up, where setting people up for success. And we don't even need to get to delegation of it. I'm more so interested on like, how do you become black belt at sales? One thing you've talked about is how to be a business person who solves problems, which I love that framework because all businesses are people that take problems of other companies or people and make them their own, right? I think we kind of lose sight of that because, like, oh, let me show you my framework or my IP or my case studies. It's like you're not listening to this person, but like,
That's
yeah, I'd
that's
love
just
to
it.
hear your
Listen.
advice for sales.
Yeah. So I mean, I think you just nailed it. There's first of all, sales is not checkers; it's chess. It's a strategic game, and quite often people think, "Oh, just hire a salesperson. Anybody off the street will train them." Depending on the kind of sale you're doing, sales needs to be very strategic. We follow a plan. We follow a process. We bring systems to chaos or randomness. That's what a salesperson should do. Now, in speaking to you, Jim, it should never seem like I'm following a process. It needs to be personable. It needs to be, at least when you're doing a consultative type of sale, you want to ask a lot of questions and listen really carefully. Because if I do it right, you'll tell me what's important. You'll tell me. And then every single buyer has the same set of needs or the same set of curiosities, which are also their same set of fears, right? And their fears or curiosities always come down to six things. It's super simple. Can I just, do we have time for me to tell you now? Yeah. Budget, need, timing, trust. And then there's two magical technical things, for your shirt company. Maybe the technical thing is what's in the fabric that makes it so you don't see sweat. Is that going to affect me? Right? That might be a technical thing, or a technical thing too might be, well, I don't like your color selections, whatever. So you always have to figure out your technical things. That's fine. But everybody, you and me and everybody else, we worry about budget, right? How much is it? Have you ever heard of the how much is it family?
Oh no, that's
Right?
awesome.
How much is it? No matter what you say, their answer is how much is it? How much is it? How much is it? So we call that the how much is it family. I got that from somebody else. So budget, you got need. Like, why do they need this? At some point when I'm in a customer call, a new customer call, I'll ask them like, why don't you do nothing? Like, why are you talking to me? And they'll say, well, we really need this. Okay. How long have you gone without it? It seems like forever. Oh, well, how does that make you feel? Right? And they're like, it's not good. This is the impact. This is okay. Well, let's see if I can help you. Right? It's just consultative sales, right? So budget, need, timing, why now, and trust, why us or why not us. So those things are important, but really it comes down to asking great questions and listening very, very carefully.
Yeah, even the question you asked there on the follow up, it's like, how long have you gone without it, and how does that make you feel? Kind of, and those are like open ended questions, which I was guilty of, like these close ended questions where it's yes no, and it's like, oh crap, the conversation hit a wall. So yeah, I think no, I like the technical side too, and it's so tough too. It's like finding, because founder is always the best at selling their thing because it's their baby, and then finding that person to like hand it off. Especially to your point, if it's a strategic sell, a lot of times these founders, more in your pinky finger than people will know in 6 months. Like, oh yeah, we did something 4 years ago that was like that, and let me pull that out of my brain archive.
Yeah. Do you know what? Something I learned years ago. I came through Sprint. Sprint Telecom is where I learned. And one of the things that Sprint did really well is, they gave us the technical training, which is fine, but they also gave us sales training. And now, dial it forward. How many years has it been? I was at Sprint like 30 plus years ago. How many companies call sales training product training? They'll like, this is a countertop, this is the kind of stone it's made of, or this is Hilti tools, these are the features and benefits. That's their sales training. That's not sales training. That's product training. But if you want to have a great sales team, train them to sell, right? Train them to sell. Imagine, do I have time for an analogy? Okay, so I love hunting and fishing, so I'm going to use a hunting analogy, but we're going to go back in time. Okay, so we're huddled in a cave. You're the chief of the tribe. There's a bunch of little smoky fires all over the place, little family groups. It's raining outside, sort of drizzling. The rain is still draining down. One of the kids comes up to you and says, Chief Jim, we're hungry. And you're like, well, I'll send the hunters out. And your wife goes, you haven't given them any arrows. You're like, they'll do fine. We'll send them out, see what they can find. Well, they come back with nothing. And the kids still come up to you and they're like, Chief Jim, like, we're still really hungry. You're like, okay, well, we got you some arrows. We're going to send you out there, but you didn't train them on how to use the arrows. Your tribe is going to starve. And how many of us as business owners are doing the same thing?
Oh man, so true. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You have to train them, like sharpen your arrows. Here's how to aim. Here's how to retrieve it. Here's how to safely aim. Don't shoot your buddy in the back, like all those things, right? But we are that chief of the tribe, and all of those people in our company rely on us. We have to train our people so they go out there and they bring us back business.
Yeah. It's so true. Setting them up for success as opposed to like, you're head of sales, go get them, right, and come back in 90 days with the pipeline.
Let me know how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that kind of going back to me having to reschedule this, like time management, because even whether it's good times or bad, like growing pains happen, and all of a sudden you're wearing different hats. It's like, oh man, I'm head of sales right now. I'm customer service right now. And then, oh, we want to buy this company. It's like, oh wow, that came with all these other things I wasn't thinking through. And I get really frustrated with myself when it's like sometimes I'm working on like the big picture strategic stuff. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Then other times you're like back in the weeds. And so as like, busy founders are trying to manage their time, but more so managing their energy and impact. You have something around like time management is like brushing your dog. I was like, what is
You've
that?
done your homework. Yeah, you've done your homework. So
Yeah.
listen, time management's a constant struggle. But I came up with that analogy because it's so true. Think for a moment. I'm not talking about your house, Jim, but in my house, let's say I'm ready to go and my wife's still getting ready. Let's just say. Let's just say. And so my wife says,
I have two daughters, by the way. So
so there you go. Yeah, that's right. So let's just say we're going to live in that world of let's just say. And so the dog is there. Your dog's name is Fido or Bruno. Let's say Fido, right? So Fido's there, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to brush Fido. So you take out the brush, you start brushing Fido. He's loving his life. He's like, oh, yeah, I love you, Dad, right? And you take off enough hair and fur that you could literally build another dog, right? We've all done that, right? And so you're still waiting. It's been 9 minutes, so it's not 10 minutes yet. So you think, I'll go to the kitchen, I'll get a glass of water. So you go get a glass of water, and Fido follows you in the kitchen, rubs up against your leg. Now you're nicely dressed. You've got your suit on. You're getting ready to go somewhere nice. You look down at your suit, and you're like, Fido, serious, I just brushed you. There's still hair all over my leg. And it's that same concept of time management. It is like brushing your dog. Please, anybody listening, don't think that time management is a one and done. It's just not. It is a constant lifetime study. Now, people aren't going to like to hear that. And yet, I'm saying it. You can argue with me all you want. It doesn't matter. I'm still going to say it. I have to constantly be managing my time, constantly tweaking it. One of the things I have to know as a business owner, and this comes back to what you were saying, is something called my revenue responsibility per hour. Have you ever heard of that before?
No, I love that. That's very cool.
So in economics, it's called Ricardo's law of comparative advantage, but that's super boring. So I call it revenue responsibility. But take your annual sales. So just say it's $1 million a year, and then take the number of hours you work in a year, and I know this is wrong, but let's say it's 2,000 hours, like 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. Everybody can do their own math as they're driving. Well, that's $500 an hour. So now somebody listening is going to go, "Hey, Rubino, you crazy? I can't charge my clients 500 bucks an hour." Well, you misunderstood the point of the exercise. My responsibility as the owner, looking out over all operations, I have to be making decisions and making strategic moves at the $500 per hour level. So what that means is, let's say that you're shipping these neat shirts, right? NEAT is your company name, so you're selling these shirts. Let's say the box rep decides to stop by, your packaging rep. She's super nice. She's in the neighborhood. She thinks she's going to stop by, just sit in your office. So she walks in, says, "Hey, Jim, I'm in the neighborhood. I thought I'd sit down." And you're like, "I appreciate you coming by, but we only work on preset appointments. Thank you. Now's not a good time." And so you stand up and you escort her out because your responsibility is 500. She has to add value to you at $501 an hour, or she doesn't get to sit in the chair. Right? Can I keep going?
Yeah, please. And I feel like saying no is a big part of this,
You
right? That
got
can
to
be
say
hard
no
for.
nicely.
Yeah,
You got
yeah.
to say no, but you got to say no nicely, but you got to say no. Right? And that's my behavioral style. I have to say it nicely. Other people are just like, "Get out. No, go." Right? So, because sometimes people say to me, "But Dom, we have an open door policy. I don't want to say no to my guys if they come in and bug me." I'm like, "Fine. Keep the open door policy Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 till 2. Otherwise, we're running a company here. We absolutely have an open door policy Tuesdays, Thursdays, 10 till 2. Come in anytime you want." Right? The other thing that goes with revenue responsibility per hour is you don't want to be $1 million business anymore. You want to be a $2 million business or 1.2. Just choose your number and do the math. What that challenges us to do, or what it should challenge us, is now you've got to level up what you're doing every hour. Be a more important person, make more important decisions. Or as they say on the West Coast, only the best surfers ride the biggest waves. So get out there and ride a bigger wave.
No, that's so cool that you have like I'm obsessed with the idea of like 10x is easier than 2x. And it's like, what got you here will keep you here. It's like you've got to raise your game. And yeah, it's having that awareness of like, wait, where am I putting my time? It's like, why am I still doing that? But yeah, and I think your point is like, it's something that you're always working on. It's not like you just fix it. It's like, oh, solve that problem, on to the next one. It's, you've got to have that ritual of auditing and assessing and pruning, I guess. Um, yeah, we also hit on, you and I were kind of both have been a part of EO Entrepreneurship Organization. I've probably talked about it too much on this podcast, or maybe not enough. I don't know. But for people that don't know, basically you're a business of a certain size to qualify, and you talk with other founders or business owners, and it's in a format of not saying, "Hey, you do this, I did that, I crushed it." It's more about vulnerability and experience shares, because this stuff's hard. And you were in it for a while. And so, would you speak to the importance of having peers or a group like EO when going through your founder journey, or any kind of key takeaways from making that investment in it? Because it's not cheap, and it's a time commitment.
So it is all of those things. It's not cheap and it's a time commitment. I never get the saying right, but you know that you're the most like the people you hang out with, the 5 people you hang out. So let's start there. I remember once I was in a BNI group, and I'm not knocking BNI. For some people, that's a good group for them. But I did my update presentation, and my update presentation was, "Hey, sorry I wasn't here last week. I was in New Zealand speaking, and now I'm back. I'm going to be doing a speaking gig at the golf course next week, and then I got this radio thing I'm doing. And if anybody has any questions, ask me about this." Right? And the woman across from me sort of flumps down her head on the table, and she goes, "Why are you in our group?" And I thought, "Uh-oh, she's right. What the heck am I doing here?" It was just the wrong group for me. It wasn't the right group. So you have to think about who you're hanging out with. I can tell you an observation that I've made, and I've been fortunate to be a business coach for a really long time, and I love it. I'm supposed to be a business coach. I didn't know that. I started business coaching before those 2 words were even a thing. But what I've noticed is that my most successful clients Not the ones I, yeah. So my most successful clients were already part of an industry association. So Mechanical Contractors Association or Cabinet Makers Association or Home Builders Association, they're already part of those things, and they're still that they have enough ego to set their ego aside, right? Imagine what it takes to be George St. Pierre. He's one of my favorite MMA fighters. To go to a new gym and say, "I think I'm weak on the left-handed takedown, a double leg, and I think you're my teacher." Like, how much ego does he have to say that I have no problems except for that one, and I think you're my solution? So for anybody who says coaching's not going to work for me, I don't need consultants, I don't need a digital marketer, we can kind of do it ourselves. You're not. You're not going to do it yourself. You have to go find the right people. So when we look at that, it really becomes obvious. Go hang out with the right people, which is why you and I have an EO experience, entrepreneurs organization, because you're just around other people. And you and I could have a conversation as entrepreneurs and say, I'm having trouble making payroll this week. And I guarantee you wouldn't look at me funny. You'd be like, oh, Dom, this is what I did in that situation. These are my solutions. This is what I try to do to avoid it. It's just a normal conversation. Try to have that conversation with your father-in-law, right? You don't have the intent. And so the intent is pure at EO and YPO. The intent is pure. Like, these are the solutions I've used in the past. So it's just about who you hang out with and how you feed your mind.
It's so true, and there's a couple nuggets there that really resonated. It's having that peer group to feed your mind, have that growth mindset, and like check the ego at the door. Because even now, I actually got kind of like a marketing coach, and I have a growth marketing agency. I've written a book on it. I should be a quote unquote expert, but it's like no, it's like the second you call yourself an expert, you get into a danger zone. But my buddy, he's the CMO of a publicly traded company. I was like, I've never done it at that scale. Can I pay you to just meet with me? And I think you're right. People that are have the ego to check their ego and have that growth mindset. That's what I want to be around, because that's energizing. Yeah. Well, very cool. Well, I know we're running up on time. There's one last question I'd like to ask. What is the nicest thing anyone's done for you in your professional career?
Oh, what's the nicest thing anybody's done for me? The nicest thing anybody's done for me is an unsolicited testimonial. Like when I get an email from a client who's just so happy, um, you would expect me as a business coach and an entrepreneur to say it's something about money, but I don't care. I'm going to make money, you know? But when somebody actually makes a change, that's good. The other thing that's nice is when somebody's wife gets on the phone with me and says, "Hey, I just knew you're having a coaching meeting with Jerry today. I just want to say thanks." I'm like, okay. I don't know what to do. I actually don't know what to do. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's just what we do. They're like, it's been amazing. Thank you. I'm like, okay, that kind of makes it all. I'm just getting goosebumpy here. Um, yeah, those are the cool things. I've never been asked that question before. Thank you. That's a pretty
Oh,
neat one.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah. Especially business, it's more than just business. It impacts your headspace and your personal life, your family life. So it's everything. Well, very cool. Well, there's a lot of cool stuff that you're doing, from the content you're putting out to the coaching. And so, where can people connect with you, whether it's podcasts or stuff you're putting out there? Where can we send them?
Sure. So I specialize in trades contractors. So if anybody's in the trade space, hopefully you already know who I am. Maybe not. But I've got two podcasts. One is called Profit Tool Belt, and then the other one's called, we joked about it already, Cabinet Maker Profit System. And in both of those, we talk about the business of the contracting business. And then I do training webinars. We always keep a wait list going because I have another one coming up in a couple of weeks, but I don't know when this episode will go live. But do you mind if I tell people how to get in touch with me and get on the? Oh, okay. Yeah, just send me a text. It doesn't have to be complicated. So my cell is 315-903-7853, and just say wait list. And then I know, because of that crazy keyword, that you want to be on the wait list, and then we'll just send you a note when we're having a training. And the training that I'll be doing next, probably the next two or three, is actually on time, team, and money for contractors, because those are consistently painful themes. Painful is the right way to say it. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if you can become black belt at running a bootstrap business, it gives you like the ultimate foundation of being good at business in general. So that's key, especially in that category. We have to manage people and labor and supplies. So very cool. But Dom, this was a blast, man. Just I feel like I talked to you for a while, but it's super fun to connect and look forward to following along with everything you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I appreciate it.